Alright, so this is my top 10 favorite films of 2021. If you're already familiar with these list videos that I do, you can go ahead and look at the timestamp below and skip to whatever part of the video or episode you want to. If not, I'm going to explain the rules really quick and we're going to go right into it from there. So the rules for this is that every 4 months, a year from 1930 to 5 years before the current one, a year is picked at random. I get 4 months to watch as much as I can from that randomized year. Features only, features at least being an hour. Like it doesn't have to be theatrical released. It could be a TV movie or anything like that. But the main thing is that it had to have been seen or released to the public that year outside of a film festival. So if a film that played in France in 2020 and was released here in 2021, it counts as 2020, man. And the new rule that I had is that I wanted to do at least 5 years before the current year, because when it came to this list, man, I'm looking at my top 10 here, and 8 out of the 10 of them were rewatches. Now, I'm okay with rewatches, man. Some of these I got new perspectives on, some of these my opinions went up on, but ultimately a lot of these films are very fresh in my mind, and there wasn't a whole ton from this year that I hadn't seen, because it is so recent. So, from very previous years, a lot of the big titles I feel like I have seen. So I feel like at least 5 years. Oh, and also as well is that one of the films on this list I didn't see until October of last year. It wasn't released here until October of last year, but it's a 2021 film. And these are not meant to be definitive favorite lists. These are just meant to be for fun and all that. But I just kind of wanted to feel, I felt like 5 years was a good enough time frame for that. So in this case, it would be up to 2017 because I already did the 2018 one. So then if I did it again next year, it'd be up to 2019 and so on and so forth. So at the end, we're going to randomize it from 1930 to 2017. And then in July, we will do the top 10 of that list. So without further ado, man, let's get into the list. All right, man, starting out the list with a fresh cup of coffee. And at number 10 is Joel Coen's adaptation of The Tragedy of Macbeth.
So all hail Macbeth and Banquo, Banquo and Macbeth. All hail.
Stay you imperfect speakers, tell me more. I know I am Thane of Glamis, but how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief. Say from whence you owe this strange intelligence, or why upon this blasted heath you stop our way with such prophetic greeting.
The earth hath bubbles as the water has, and these are of them. Whither are they vanished?
And what seemed corporal melted as breath into the wind. Would they have stayed?
So, originally when I had seen this film theatrically, my knowledge of Shakespeare was very limited, and even now, knowing the majority of his work but not necessarily having read it, in terms of, actually sitting down and going through the original work. I know Shakespeare's work primarily through the adaptations throughout the years. Actually it was funny, on one of the recent Blu-ray episodes I was talking about the Olivia Hussey version of Romeo and Juliet. So you're watching this film, man. It's based off Macbeth. There's been plenty of adaptations around it, about it. Roman Polanski's version, there was one a couple years ago, I believe, from Michael Fassbender. So if you're going to take a story like this, you got to ask yourself, what are they bringing to the table? What are they really going to do new with it? And in a shallow sense, but in a sense that works for the sake of the film, is that, when I say shallow, I mean it's a shallow observation, but one that has to be noted in terms of what makes this film stand out, is primarily a visual component, man. This is a film that was primarily shot on sound stages, man. So you have a lot of sequences where the depth of field is an illusion, where you have these grand open spaces, or what looks to be grand open spaces that may not actually be, painted shadows on the wall, light that's actually going out of the room, when logically that wouldn't make sense. I believe it's only briefly that this film was actually shot outside, but that works to the film's advantage, man, because it all feels like a stage play, man. It all feels like sets in a way that, when you're watching a play, at some point you know that the immersion is not there. You are sitting in an auditorium, and while you may be engaged in a play, the difference is that you see the sets, you see the set design, but you still know you are watching a play. Whereas the benefit of doing a format like that theatrically, in a theatrical film, is that you have these really wild sets of architecture, man. Certain moments that you don't get a grand view of the interiors, but it works better to connecting all these different rooms, all these buildings, man. It all feels very sincere and feels genuine, but at the same time, also not feeling realistic. The film feels like it's on a whole other plane in its own, man, because you're taking these theatricalities, these big performances, but you also have the advantage of, because you're doing a film, you can have quieter, subtle moments. Like early on, there's a great exchange between Macbeth, played by Denzel Washington, and Lady Macbeth, played by Frances McDormand. They have moments early on where they can whisper to each other that normally if you're seeing a play, they want you to be able to reach the guy in the back, at least that's what I was taught. But here you have the benefit of having the best of both worlds. And rewatching this again, I think this definitely benefits from being a film that is watched with subtitles, because when I initially had seen this theatrically, once you are immersed in the film and you have the spectacle of the visuals, you start to not wear out its welcome, because I don't want to say that in terms of you get tired of it, because what's great about it is that it seems like every shot, and nearly every shot in this film, man, it's just something you can tell the craftsmanship that went into it, man. And I believe the cinematographer was, his name, Bruno Delbano, who worked on the last couple Coen Brothers films. He worked on The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, as well as Inside Llewyn Davis. And it's interesting kind of the comparisons there in terms of how the film is shot, because you look at a film like Inside Llewyn Davis, and it's got a very gray kind of color palette. It's a film that takes place in the 60s, so when you look at like an old photograph, and it almost seems like worn and faded, and that's how that film looks, But then you have Buster Scruggs, which is, even though it's a film broken up into different segments, it's an anthology film, for the most part you have these very bright-looking, open landscapes, beautiful vistas. That first short with Tim Blake Nelson, it's beautiful to look at. So it's interesting to look at the contrast of these three films as well. I think if you're going to take a film like this, or a story like this, and try to do again, I haven't read Macbeth, so I can't say for sure, but it seems to be a closer adaptation in terms of how the dialogue is presented. The whole film is presented in this Shakespearean kind of talk, that what I was getting at before. Watching theatrically, when you first get over that, not literally getting over that, or not getting over that, when you get bored of it, but in terms of just when you know what you're in for. Initially, I think I had I had a bit of disconnect in terms of the plot structure, the dialogue, the actual conflict, having a general kind of knowledge of Macbeth story, the intricacies and the interweavings of the characters went over my head on the first initial viewing, but I still liked it. So having the ability to rewatch it with subtitles, where I'm not missing any dialogue, I'm able to take in more of it and actually understand what the real tragedy of Macbeth is, the deception and the bloated narcissism that would eventually lead to his downfall. Not to say that, you can, on just a totally superficial, shallow level, I mean, it's obviously there. You have this rise and fall to someone who is deceived by these three witches and his wife into killing the former king, because he was duped out of what should have been, what he thought should have been his, the crown. But watching it with subtitles, you're able to get more into the actual conflicts, where they arise from, and what the real problem is, in terms of just plot structure. I'm sure I can't compare it to other adaptations in terms of how they present it, but here, using primarily just this Shakespearean dialogue, it makes for that coupled with the visuals in the film, makes for a very out-of-worldly kind of experience, like on another plane of existence, man. It feels like it's on an alien planet or something, where everything is so heightened and exaggerated. These big, beautiful architecture sets, or this big, beautiful architecture, I should say, mixed with this dialogue that feels so ancient and feels so isolated from where we are, people in 2023 speak. It's a very hypnotic experience, man. It's a film that you watch with the lights out and you just allow yourself to get immersed in the black and white, which is another thing to say. The film is entirely in black and white in a way that certain scenes, the way they're lit, which benefits before the way, what I was talking about before with the way that it's almost entirely on soundstage, is that the lighting of it, you see certain shadows just illuminate more, and certain, you have these foggy kind of fields where you're just primarily fixed on certain characters, man. It's a very dizzying experience, but in a good way, it really adds to this real hypnotic kind of way of watching it. On the second viewing, I found myself just much more engaged than I was the first time, and I enjoyed it the first time. And but when I walked into the film not knowing it was going to be so Shakespearean, that initially I found myself struggling to keep up with the film. I felt like I was falling behind. But with that knowledge this time of walking into it, knowing at least the basic plot structure from the first viewing, and being able to follow along this time created for a much more satisfying experience. And this is a case, man, where unfortunately it's just not on Blu-ray or 4K. I mean, it's a beautifully shot film. It's an Apple TV original, and I've mentioned numerous times before how I just don't like how these films are getting releases. If you don't have the streaming service or you don't watch it online, you ain't never gonna see it, man. And I think it's totally ridiculous, man, that unless a company, someone else picks it up, like Criterion or that company who's putting out the 4K of All Quiet on the Western Front, unless they pick it up, these most likely will not be coming to any kind of physical media unless somebody else, does a bootleg of it, which I've seen some people online do certain titles that are streaming only. But I'm sure somebody more familiar with Shakespeare's work, and specifically with this play, will have more insight than I have. But just watching it as a film goer, being able to actually take in the intricacies of the plot and the character dynamics, I found this to be a very pleasurable experience, man. Very hypnotic, as well as, it's almost 2 hours or so, and it goes by at a pretty brisk pace, man. Okay, about an hour 45. Because when you actually have the inevitable downfall of Macbeth, I found that all just completely enjoyable, man. Engaging. And Denzel Washington, who is a classically trained actor, to my knowledge, I'm not very well, I don't have much of a background in theater, but from what I've seen, man, it seems to be an intentional kind of playing on these theatrical kind of settings, on playing it up. Not as a negative, but playing it up as if you were on a play. These big emotional scenes, but like I said before, having that subtleness and tenderness that you couldn't get from a stage play. I just found myself completely engaged in the film, more so than I guess I thought it would be with a lot of Shakespeare's work that I have been more familiar with. But completely enjoyed this film, man. Completely engrossed from beginning to end. Film that benefits on multiple viewings. Really enjoyed this one, man. Tragedy of Macbeth at number 10. All right, man. At number 9, we have After Yang.
There's this part in the film. It's a great part where the man is explaining to his German friend why it's so difficult for him to describe the taste of tea. He says there's no language for it. There are no words to adequately express the mysterious nature of tea. And his German friend, who's just standing right beside him with a cup of tea, says, "Yes, but I imagine things like you are walking through a forest and there are leaves on the ground and it just had rained and the rain has stopped and it's damp and you walk and somehow that is all in this tea." I loved that so much. I loved that so much. Somehow that is all in this tea. Somehow that is all in this tea. It over and over again.
So this film was directed by this guy Kogo Nada, who a couple years ago did a film called Columbus back in 2017, which I had never seen. But when I was rewatching the trailer for this and that name came up, I thought, man, that sounds really familiar. So I looked it up, man, and yeah, I remember when that film came out, but I never saw it and I never made the connection at first. This is based off a short story, I believe, the name of which I don't have up here, but this takes place in the near future. We have this family unit. The father, like Colin Farrell, has an adopted daughter and has an android kind of sibling. It's a used android. In the future, they primarily buy them new from this company. I think it was called Brothers and Sisters. Essentially, one day, this android Yang, played by Justin H. Min, he just stops working, man. And they're trying everything they can. Jake kind of takes him to this underground, not even underground, but this sort of I don't even know what you'd call it. I guess like illegal kind of guy who works in these androids and stuff. You're not supposed to break open the firmware, but he does. And in doing that, he ends up discovering there's actually more going on with this particular unit, man. Because it's a used android, it has more. It had they realized that there was something obviously before that you got to the family unit. So a lot of the film, man, what's interesting about it is that the past couple of years we've been getting just some really terrific I feel like adult science fiction films, man. Films that take place in the near future and feel like a realistic depiction of where this can really go to. I know there's stuff like there was that, I never watched the show, but there was that episode of Black Mirror that was I think sort of similar. They had the android that you could God, what the hell was it? It was like it was like a replacement for someone who died. And this is a case where it all feels stylized and it all feels, new and bright, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like, what I was talking about before is that early on when Colin Farrell, he goes this kind of like dingy, kind of like, black market kind of guy who can fix it, like that feels honest, it feels like a guy who, the way we have like engineers now or like, kind of blue collar workers, a guy like this, a blue collar worker who ends up, knowing how to work on these kind of androids and all that. What's really interesting about the film is in the way it's directed. There are just these really there are these really interesting long sequences where the film changes aspect ratios, where we're just seeing through what Jake is watching these just really terrific almost like montage sequences of going through space and going through the memories of Yang, and eventually what happens in the second half is another character comes into the picture that had a relation to Yang and where that goes to, so it's a slow moving I don't even want to say really mystery, man, because it's not that kind of film. Like I was talking about before with the tragedy of Macbeth, I feel like this is the kind of film that if you really just kind of sit on and really like let the film kind of take you over and embrace you and not look for exactly, unlike Macbeth, look for a traditional structural narrative, man, I think you're going to get something really cool out of this, man. It's just the way that the film is done. I just found it to be repeatedly hypnotic. I loved a lot of the POV sequences where we're looking through Yang's memory and we see kind of the lead up to where he got to this family. And speaking of the family as well, I think both of the lead performances, Jake by Colin Farrell and Kyra played by Jodie Turner-Smith, who I'm watching the film, man, and I'm like, who is that actor, man? And she was in a film a couple years ago, Queen and Slim, with Daniel, don't remember his last name, Kaluuya, I think it was called, I think his name, and she, which is a good film as well. She's playing a different kind of character in that film. She doesn't even look the same in this film, man. She looks just completely different, but she's, very understated performances from the both of them. It's kind of coming to the realization that, on a totally surface level, what's very easy is, the Star Trek Next Generation dealt with it, is the relationship between, humans and androids. At what point does it become more than just a computer, for this family? And when I say shell, I mean that's very easy entry point for any kind of science fiction like this, where you have an android that's, looks like a human, which I always thought, if you had an android or a robot, I guess probably more so a robot that looked like something else, then, how would that affect the story? And the way that this is done here, man, is that because it's primarily almost entirely through flashback with Yang's character, it's these just great sequences, man. Just these great, when you're not going through his memory, you have a lot of great dialogue sequences. It's one of my favorites in the film is when you have Kyra and Yang basically talking at, like, it's just this like 5-minute sequence and all that, when she's asking him about honesty and if he's able to, change that and how he feels differently, man. It's just great. some of the other side characters in this who have smaller parts. You have Clifton Collins Jr., who has a small part in the film. He's not in it a whole lot, but he's good. And Haley Lou Richardson, who I've mentioned a couple times on the show, she's quickly becoming one of my favorite actors working, man. She was in Montana Story, which was one of my favorite films of last year. Support the Girls, which I really liked a lot, and she's great. It's interesting to look at her performances in all three of those films and that I've seen in Montana Story, Support the Girls, and this, where she's playing three very different kinds of characters, man. I mean, this performance here is probably closer to, in terms of, probably closer to a role like Montana Story, where, you know, he's not quite as bubbly as Support the Girls, but whereas Montana Story, you know, you have a character who's dealing with, you know, grief and loss and is pushing people away. Here, it's sort of like, I don't really want to go into it too much because I'm trying to dance around exactly where it all fits into it, man. But I just found this to be just one thing I wanted to mention as well is that I had looked up Kogonada's previous work, and I've been reading some interviews with him, and his inspiration before, he's a big fan of Yasujiro Ozu, and you know, you hear that, man, and it totally comes through with this film, man. Not just the family unit and the conflicts in it, but just these long, interesting dialogue sequences. You watch like an Ozu film, you know, like Late Spring or any of those, and you just see you have these great sequences of just this inner turmoil with this family, man. And you know, like with a lot of, I mean, this is much more broader, obviously, than an Ozu film, but like you watch a lot of those films, and you just have primarily a lot of sequences in these houses, man, with just these characters, and you know the way that their relationships affect one another, man. It's beautiful, man. And this was one that just, it came out early in the year, and it kind of I feel like it kind of came and went, but a film that is just really shooting for the stars with this, man. It's really just something exceptional, man. After watching this, it made me want to go and urgently watch his film Columbus, which I'm not as familiar with, but because of how strongly I felt on this film, it made me want to go to his previous work. I think he's also done some mini documentaries, like I've seen that he did one on the world of Apu, the Satyajit Ray trilogy, but really enjoyed this film, man. I'm really glad we're getting a lot of just more adult-oriented science fiction that are putting on a lot of these just interesting ideas, man, about the future. It's real cool stuff. Big fan of this film. Number 9 is After Yang. All right, man. At number 8 is a film by Uberto Pasolini from Ireland. This is Nowhere Special.
We were thinking, maybe getting a dog?
I know Michael would love a puppy to be responsible for.
Great. I sort of hoped the boy would enjoy the same childhood as ourselves, not just inside on the computer all day. And here he's free to run around, not be mollycoddled, free to climb trees and fall out of trees. I mean, we look after him, obviously, but you know what I mean.
No, I'm sure he'd love to climb trees. He's a quiet wee boy, but he listens and he's always well behaved. He's very popular at school. I'm always being told what a great kid he is. He's loving Curran. He's a happy wee boy. I want... He deserves a normal family. 2 parents, a loving family home, and all the opportunities I never had as a child.
Look at that one as well. Oh! You bang your head, are you alright? Are you sure? Are you sure?
I want him to be able to do all the things I never could, never even thought of.
This stars James Norton, and I'm watching the film, man, and I'm like, where the hell have I seen this guy before? He looks so familiar, and for some reason, man, the deep recesses of my brain brought me back to, what year was that, 2017 or so? Remember they did that remake of Flatliners, man, and I remember he was in the trailer. I don't know why the hell I thought of that. You know what he reminds me of, man? He reminds me of, what the hell is his name, man? Oh, gonna have to look that up while I talk about this, man. But, geez Louise, man, what a terrific film this was. This film really did blow me away, especially this is one being that I had no previous knowledge of. So watching this, not knowing how, you know, the general plot of it, it's great, man. And the actor I'm thinking of, by the way, is Scoot McNairy. He looks like an Irish Scoot McNairy. You've seen him in a bunch of stuff. He was in Killing Him Softly. He had a small part in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But this is a great film, man. This film reminds me of a film I saw recently, which was Broker by Hirokazu Kurita. And this is a film where you have this guy, James Norton, who is, he basically doesn't have too long to live, maybe only a couple months or so. And he's got to find a new home for his son, man. He's he's a single dad. He's, realizing that his time is limited, and he's got to find a place for his son, and just the difficulties that come along with it, man. You watch this film, man, and it comes off as intentionally repetitive, where you're watching the film and it's these sequences after sequences of him meeting with this family, and the family seems alright at first, but then there's some cracks, in the fabric. That's what this cracks in the fabric. I don't know what they say, man. But some more than others. Some families like, it's a little weird, man. They're acting kind of, like nonsensical. And you got some other families. And it's like, geez Louise, man, what looks up with these people. And you get a good feeling of the mindset of this guy John, where you know that you're watching the film, man, and you're seeing family after family. And even though you're not familiar with, you don't know the exact time frame in this, it can't be that long, man. But you know it's long enough where at a certain point you're wondering, man, you get, I'm watching this film, and I had the same idea that he has. I'm like, man, he doesn't have too much longer to live. What the hell's going on here? And he, there's a great scene where he's at a diner with one of the ladies from the I don't know, not the orphanage, but the one of the ladies going to help him out find this is the organization. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he's basically saying, man, like, you're choosing these nonsense families, man. I wouldn't trust these people. It's just crazy as hell. And what the film does exceptionally great is it's dramatic film, but it's not melodramatic, This could be, this very easily could have delved into some nonsense melodrama and have big Oscar-worthy scenes where he has to monologue and really over-exaggerate, which would be a very cliche and easy thing to do, but this movie is a lot more subtle than that. What it does do is really make you care for the relationship between John and his son, Michael, I mean, you get the two of these two together, and it really does a great contrast where we see them in these moments just together, It's sort of like they're just hanging out, doing these, hanging out at the park. There doesn't need to be any big scenes where they're telling each other, hey, man, I love you. Hey, man, I love you, too. I don't know the kind of kid saying, hey, man, I love you, a small kid. But you get the idea what I'm saying, man. It totally subverts that, man. It goes beyond that. But at the same time, giving you a real sense of relationship. You really see that John really does care for this kid, man. Obviously, getting the shallow part of it aside, where if he didn't care about him, he wouldn't bothering trying to find a new home for him. But because their relationship works, man, and these little moments that end up kind of blossoming into this deeper relationship that you feel as an audience member, you as well get into the mindset of John, where you too I became frustrated, at these situations. You're watching this and you really do think, like, when he lets Michael be off on his own with his family, you're thinking, like, would you let your kid hang out these people or hang out these people? And that's totally up to you. But because we as an audience see the cracks as John does, then we start to feel more weird about that. We feel the frustration with him. He's trying to still get money from his job as a window cleaner, but at the same time, it's just being able to actually go to these families, meet these people, and all that, man. I mean, it's a film that, it's repetitive in the way that it's not boring and it's not monotonous, man, because it's less concerned with being a traditional narrative structure, and is more concerned with just this moment in time in these characters' lives, man. I've noticed that being a theme with a lot of this list, man. Replacing traditional narrative ABC structure with just glimpses into these people's lives, man. Like just these moments in time, and that's what this film does so greatly. It's a moment in time with these characters that really makes you feel for them, man. Like I said before, it ain't melodramatic. It's not cliche. I wish I knew that girl's name, man. The girl who was helping him out, man. She was solid in the film as well, but for one that I had not been familiar with previously, this was just a total surprise, man. I found myself completely emotionally invested in this, man, and I was reading up some discussion online about it, and people seem to be really affected by the film. It's just great. I recommend as well Broker by Hirokazu Kurita as a similar kind of film of them trying to find a family for this young baby, but man, totally love this film. What a total surprise. I didn't hear anyone talk about, but really left an impact. So at number 8, that is Nowhere Special. At number 7, from filmmaker Apichatpong Weerasethakul, Memoria.
It's like a rumble from the core of the earth. Bang! and then it shrinks.
This is probably 6,000 years old.
Oh.
Yes. Drilled into her head to release bad spirits.
Man, you know, I tell you, this film started out as number 10 on the list, but the more I thought about it, the more it sat with me, and it kept raising higher and higher. In fact, it may be even raised higher, but I think right here is a very good spot for it, man. Man, I just totally love this film. Watching this again, I was worried about seeing it at home, you know, getting that experience as opposed to of seeing it theatrically, which, if you're unfamiliar, originally that Neon, who distributed the film, were going to have a theatrical only release of this, one city at a time, but that was quickly abandoned, and now you can find various Blu-rays in Australia and the UK, as well as streaming places, and I watched this online, so you can very easily find this film. And this is a totally unique film, man. I'm not familiar with Peach Pong's previous films. At least I haven't seen them, I should say. I remember when his film Uncle Boon Me came out in 2010. That was a big thing, man. A lot of people were talking about it, and I just did not. I did not see it. And I think I heard some talks when Cemetery of Splendor came out, but this is his partially, to my knowledge, partially his English language debut, even though probably only about 30% of the film or so is in English. We have this character, Tilda Swinton, who's going to Colombia to see her sister who is sick. And, you know, when she's there, man, I mean, the opening scene of this film is her in bed, and she hears this, like, rumbling noise, this, like, banging, and it happens every now and then. She doesn't know if she's going crazy. She doesn't know what's going on here, and from there we follow her along, in part discovering what's going on with this sound, and in part being immersed in the Colombian landscape, meeting these people, man, and trying to decipher what it all means, you know? This is the kind of film that if you're somebody who needs constant stimulation, who needs something constantly going on, and you have this something flashy, this ain't gonna be your kind of film, man. This is a very slow film, and intentionally slow. It plays a lot on memory, as the title would suggest, and of time as well. There are certain shots in this film that just linger and really let you just get in the moment. There's one shot in particular of a character laying on the ground, and you don't know if he's alive or dead, and it goes on for multiple minutes, man. And then you realize, you know, that there's something else going on in this sequence, man. One of my favorite moments in the film is really kind of stopping, and where Tilda Swinton is at this university, and she walks by this band. They're playing some jazz piece or whatever, and we just hear the song, and it's great, man. You know, it's a film that, when I say relies on memory, we as an audience are put into the mindset of this character, because one of two of that would be my favorite sequences in the film is when she goes to a sound engineer to try to explain what the sound is, and we see bit by bit something closer and closer to what she, you know, has heard. And us as an audience member, we as well are trying to remember what it sounded like too. You know, we're hearing snippets of a banging, of a rumble, as she says, but it's not quite there. Like I said, and even when I was talking about when it comes to the film taking its time, looks, you know, even the way that sequence starts off is very interesting, because, you know, she goes to the sound engineer's room and he's actually wrapping up something. You know, normally, you know, any other kind of film, a more traditional film, she would go in and he'd be ready to go, but he's listening to a piece of music and he's taking notes on it, and we, you know, listen to it for about a minute or so. He writes some more notes, he, you know, saves the file, and then from there we get into that sequence, man, that's just totally engaging. And the way that the dialogue is very mannered. With all the dialogue in the film, you know, it feels very, like, there's not a whole ton of dialogue. The film is more about mood and letting it kind of sink into you. But when there is dialogue, that's what it feels like, man. It doesn't feel, you know, conversations ain't running over each other. People say their line. There are pauses, and they take their time to really respond. I mean, even a sequence early on, I would say probably in the middle or so, when they're talking about this skeleton, this old skeleton of this child. It's a very quiet sequence. The characters are very they're not overlapping their dialogue. They're explaining it in a very calculated and almost academic way. It's very interesting, man. And the film itself, it feels surreal with some of its visuals too. There's just a one shot they used in a lot of the marketing for the film. It's Tilda Swinton in this I don't even know what to call it, man. This glass kind of house, and she's looking through it. The way it's photographed is beautiful, man. The way it's taking up most of the screen and her on the edge of it, it's fantastic, man. It's a beautiful looking film for sure. I mean, I'd love to get a 4K release of this at some point. And it's a film that you really gotta, you gotta turn the lights out. You gotta turn your cell phone off, because if you're gonna watch the film and you're gonna wait for something grandiose to happen, you're gonna be waiting for a long time, man. Because if you allow yourself to really get immersed in the film, and I understand that at home, it's more difficult to do. You got all these distractions around you. You got, your telephone, you got your Game Boy, you got this and that. In a theater, it's one thing. Silence your phone. Maybe don't shovel down popcorn in your face, preferably. But, as long as it's not distracting anybody, you do you. I ain't gonna tell you how to live your life. But my initial worry of watching this at home was that, man, I'm watching this, I'm gonna get distracted by something, by a little thing. The cat's gonna be making making sounds and snoring like a loud son of a gun. I'm gonna have to get up and get a coffee or something like that. But no, man, once you get with the film, once you gel with it, if you do gel with it, then you're in for a really, really surreal and cool experience, man. You're going to know if this is going to be your kind of film or not. If you watch the trailer and you see these shots in the trailer that just linger on, and you're like, man, what's going to happen at the end of this shot? And it cuts to next. If you're someone who that's not your thing, man, this ain't going to be your kind of film. But this totally was my kind of film, man. And I'm going with the theme of the other films in this list. I mean, when it comes to the end of the film, man, you ain't, if you're looking for clear answers, it's not going to come to you. The first time I watched this film and I got to the end, I had a lot on my mind. I was thinking, going back to the memory, I'm thinking about this film, and I'm like, well, I think this character, I think they meant this, and then I think that meant that, and then I let it sit with me. I go to rewatch it. I'm watching it again, and the last hour of the film is really just like one long sequence, man, between these two characters. And it's the closest thing to exposition at all. I mean, closest thing to any sort of explanation if that's what you're looking for. But at the same time, because the dialogue is so far and few between, and the characters are only speaking when necessary, you're lingering on every word, on every sentence. You're going, what do they mean by that? And I went online, I looked up some stuff to get some kind of interpretations on a couple of the aspects of it, and kind of aligned up where I thought as well, and even when it comes to the end of the film, I think I have my own, I know I have my own idea of certain parts of the film and certain characters. I mean, characters in the film, they appear, they go missing, characters with the same names. It's interesting, man. It's all surreal, because if you're looking for a plot structure, man, I mean, you can talk about, okay, well, she's here because she is involved with botany and stuff. There's a whole part she's going to, try to find this fridge and all that. But it's really not what it's about, man. It's like you're sitting there, you're taking in the cinematic experience, and you're either going to be on board with it or you're not. And if you're not, that's all right, man. It's all subjective, but I totally was. Man, I love this film, man. The sound of the second viewing, I really just was able to appreciate this more on a different level. With seeing it theatrically is one thing, of course, and you can't replicate that experience, but being a film like this that can still just be so engaging even at home is something else, man, that can be difficult to struggle with, is for films that are intentionally so. I love this film, man, and I know I've been saying it since last year, but I do want to check out Uncle Boon Me, because I've been hearing some solid things about that. And the other film, which I'm blanking on the name of, that I just talked about a little bit ago, Cemetery, keep blanking on the name of it. But anyways, man, check out this film if you think it's going to be your kind of thing, because if you think it's going to be your kind of thing, you're in for a real special experience, man. That is Memoria at number 7. All right, man. At number 6 is a film directed by Maria Schrader, I'm Your Man.
Hallo, Alma. Ich bin Tom.
Die testen mich, scannen mein Gehirn, Multiple Choice ohne Ende. Und was kommt dann dabei raus?
Deine Augen sind wie 2 Bergseen, in denen ich versinken möchte.
Muss zugeben, Sie haben wirklich Geschmack.
Alright, so this is a German film starring Maren Eggert and Dan Stevens. And, when I first seen this film theatrically, didn't know a thing about it. You're watching this film, you got the opening scene, you got this character Alma, played by Maren Eggert, who's at this club, they're tangoing, they're dancing, she seems kind of lonely, and then this guy comes up to her, he's very monotone voice, this guy Tom, played by Dan Stevens, very smart guy, she's asking him questions, he can answer them like no problem, quickly realize that through a malfunction, this is an experiment. Alma is working for this company, testing out this robot, this android, whatever you want to call it. And through trials, man, it comes to a point where they want the robot Tom to stay with her for a couple weeks because Alma's all by herself. She doesn't have a lover. She's just doing her own thing. She feels she's working on this project out at work, man. This research kind of project she's devoted a lot of time to, and she's on the brink of it, man. But other than that, she feels kind of unfulfilled in her life. So they send this guy Tom to her house, and from there, and here's the great thing about the film is that with a premise like that, you have the initial setup. You have this android who has to learn these human ways. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's learning as he goes along. He's he's just charismatic as hell, man. He's great. But then as you go along, the tropes, the cliches, the fish out of water aspects dwindle. They start going away, man. And from there, you get a very interesting romantic drama. And when I say romantic drama, it's not necessarily that Alma and Tom are falling in love per se, but it's the advancements really in their when I say relationship, I don't mean romantic, but in their friendship in a way where Alma at no point is she unaware of the fact that Tom is an android. So anytime he gets close to any sort of intimacy or romanticism, she's somebody who, because she has been on her own for so long, she can't separate the fact that this is just a computer, man. Another actor I want to mention in the film who was in a previous film that I watched for one of the lists is Sandra Hüller, who was in the film In the Isles with, what the hell is that guy's name? Franz something. I don't remember his name. And again, I didn't even recognize her, man. I was like, when she popped up in this film playing a really different character, man. Very great as well. I think, man, what really excels the film right off the bat are two big things. One, you have the charisma of Dan Stevens' performance. I think a lot of people in America, or most of them probably know him from a lot of films, like The Guest, Apostle. He's in a bunch of stuff, man. I think he was in the Beauty and the Beast, the Disney live action one, and his charisma shines through, man. Right from the opening scene, he's got a natural charm to him. He's funny without having to overdo it. That whenever he gets himself into situations where he is a fish out of water, he goes to order coffee at one point, and he's trying to blend in. The way of his body movements, his mannerisms, the way he has this monotone voice, but the way that he delivers certain lines and how he delivers certain lines is great, man. It's just even like moments when he's just looking at something, he's taking it all in. It's great, man. It's like you take a performance like that for granted of playing someone behind a mask or playing an android or something like that. You just think, oh, well, you do this one thing and you're all set, and then you watch a performance like his and you're like, nah, man, there's more going on with it, man. And that contrast between him and Maren Eggert, who wasn't familiar with as an actor, but she's great in the film as well, man. A lot of her dialogue is solid. A lot of her hypothesizing about about relationships with these androids and about her loneliness, and there's a whole great thing where she's talking about how if she was in a plane crash, she no matter what, man, to the end she wouldn't pray. That goes against everything that she knows, man. Everything she knows or she believes is true. And it's great, man. The film isn't trying, what I got out of it is that the film isn't trying to take a real final stance on a lot of these topics, man, about the future, about everything I was talking about before, about, evolving friendships and all that, or a friendship between these two. Because there's like a whole a great last narration of the film that kind of sums up a lot of the film, kind of the contrasting ideologies between both parts of Alma, seeing the benefits but also the other side of it, if you're living your life through these androids, do you really have a connection to something, or is it just all manufactured, And I don't think the film is trying to answer that, more so in this is just a symptom or this is just a particular place and time that this happened, man. She has one interaction at the end of this film with another character that really kind of seals the deal on it. What I was saying before is I think the script in this is really strong because all the characters in this, they have a lot more going on to them. And talking about before with After Yang, the android who wants to be more than just an android, that's exactly what we get with Dan Stevens here as he kind of learns and adapts more. Because this is written by 3 people. So you have Maria Schrader, Jan Schomburg, and Emra Breslavsky. And I know I saw Maria Schrader's last film, She Said, and I was surprised that she directed that because I'm not going to dog on the film or anything like that, but that's a film where a lot of the positives I say about the script here about you start off as one thing but then you go into something else and the interesting layered characters, She Said really doesn't have any of that. At the start of the film you know exactly what you're going to watch and it never deviates from that. The characters in that film have no depth. There's nothing to them. The characters are their jobs. That's all they are, man. At no point do you have any sort of emotional stake in the story, but here it's completely the opposite. When there's a point when Tom goes away and you really feel that loneliness and Amla, you're like, man, I really, I'm through everything, man. You feel for her, man. And when you get to the end of the film, it's so sweet in a way where it's not romantic, but it's just like, what a great way to end the film. That last dialogue exchange together, man. This is one that I think, for on a second viewing, I just really enjoyed this one even more, man. I just really got more. I got much more emotional out of this one. When I say emotional, I mean I'm crying or anything like that. I'm just saying I got much more of an emotional investment in these characters, man. And I really felt for Alma and Tom, and even the other character as well. What the hell is her name? Meta Beterin. Sure, why not, man? I mean, 2021 had some solid romance films, man, but this was one that really just knocked me on my feet, that I thought the script was so strong and the performance is so interesting and charismatic that it's just a phenomenal film, man. Really enjoyed this one. Yeah, man, at number 6, that's I'm Your Man. All right, man, got a fresh cup of joe and ready to go into the top 5. So at number 5 is a film that I just seen this last October, and that is Matthew Amalric's Hold Me Tight.
Ferme les yeux.
Ça y est.
Merci. J'aime bien te regarder les yeux fermés. Je te sens respirer. Tu me manques.
Toi aussi.
Pas tout seul?
Hein?
Tu parles à qui?
La personne?
Bah si, tu parles tout seul.
And this film is one of the reasons why I wanted to close the window on recent years for this list, because a film as exceptional as this, I would not have seen until late into the year, because this was released in 2021, but it didn't come here until 2022. And this is just an absolutely brilliant film, man. I mean, this is Matthew Amalric. I'm more familiar with as an actor, man. He's been in stuff like The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. He was in Quantum of Solace. He's an exceptional actor. Works with a lot of the same crew. You look at his page. You look at like a lot of the people that he does films with, and it's a lot of the same kind of people. And I haven't seen any of his other previously directed films, but like with some of the other films on this list, it's make me want to go and go back and look at his other work. I also forgot to mention he's also recently in Sound of Metal in the last act in that film. It's a small part, but he's solid in there as well. Really love this film, man. We got Vicky Krieps' character Claire Reese, and we start out the film, man, and she's going away from home from her husband and 2 kids, and for a good chunk of the runtime, or at least I would say for probably the first half, you're wondering like what's going on, man. The way that the characters are communicating, they're very nonchalant about her leaving her family behind. We cut back to the father and the kids, and he's talking about how she left and she's probably not going to come back for some time. So you're wondering like why, what is going on here? And I think that really adds to the way the story is told. The story is told non-linear, man. We're jumping a lot through time. We're jumping between one of the characters in this film wants to be a pianist, so there's like parts where they're playing jazz, and the editing in this film really feels kind of like a free form kind of jazz thing where you have moments in the film, man. You have characters communicating in completely different spaces. You have Vicky Krieps in a car, talking to one of her kids who's back at home, and you're wondering what's going on, man. And there's a great sequence, in the middle of the film where she takes or a great moment, I should say, where she takes a Polaroid and of an empty room, and she takes the photo out, and there's people in the photo. So when I initially watched this film, being left in the dark, that can either be a detriment or it can be a positive depending on how you react to the film. Some films you watch and, it can be at a disadvantage where you're left in the dark for so long that you're just kind of out of the film and you just lose interest, But for me, that wasn't the case because the way the film is edited and the way the story is told, I was sitting there in the theater going, you know what? I don't know exactly what's going on in terms of if it's creating its own reality or what, but I'm with it, man. I'm totally with the vision of this film. And it's just totally exceptional, man. I mean, Vicky Krieps' performance in this, I've seen her in a couple films, and I think that she's an actor who, when utilized well, can do really spectacular work, man. I mean, in Phantom Thread, she was fantastic, and I just recently saw her in Corsage, and she was great in the film as well. She's quickly becoming one of my favorite actors working just in the past couple of years. All the stuff that I've seen her in, she was in Bergman Island as well. She's been in a bunch of stuff, man. She's great. Every time she pops up into the film, she just totally brings, in this case, a quiet, subtle performance, but at the same time is very emotive. There's a great contrasting of two scenes where you have a part where she is, a guy is kind of scolding his kid for acting up, and she just totally loses on him. She starts yelling at him, talking about this kid needs to be free and stuff. And then I don't know if it's a scene directly after or a scene around that time where she's at a pub just getting completely drunk, and this is the sorrow in her voice, talking about how the people that she left back at home, and how the contrasting of those scenes going big and emotive, and then quiet and subtle. It's fantastic, man. We see a lot of her body language as she's going through the film, kind of wandering around. She goes to a fish market. She's just kind of like very blasé, just kind of limping around, man. It's exceptional, man. And I think that's one of the main reasons why the film works so well, is that ultimately the story itself, it's not anything complicated or deep, but it is going through, and it's a little difficult to talk about because I read some talk about the film, man, and some people said, oh, well, they knew what was going on from this point and that point, and me, I'm left in the dark watching this. So when there's actually kind of not even necessarily a reveal because it's gradual, but that sort of reflection on what's really happening here, man, it really puts different things in perspective. So watching this again, it gave me a new experience, the way to watch it, man. I should also say as well, the father in the film, Arya Warthalter, who plays the character Mark, he's very good as well. He's not in the film as much as Vicky Krieps, but in the parts where it goes back to him, we see his frustration and we see his kind of reasoning about her leaving, and this isn't the first time, and we kind of see how he's able to try to raise these kids without her, man. And that's the interesting thing about the film as well, because even that character, Vicky Krieps, we're watching the film, man, and we don't even know if we're even on her side or not, because we're watching it going, she left her family behind, but what is going on here, man? There's got to be something deeper. And you watch the film and you go, all right, man, I get it now. It's a beautiful film, man. It's very hypnotic and poetic, where there's just these great sequences. They have this jazz soundtrack playing over these events happening, man. There's a great sequence at the end of the film where you have one of the characters who is ripping up a journal in a tree, and you have another character who's burning a journal, and the way that it goes back and forth with the piano and the jazz soundtrack, it all flows together in a very almost lucid kind of way, man. It's very hypnotic and tender, and the use of handheld in this film in certain sequences is great. We really get into the mindset of the characters, but then, when we have times where Vicky Krieps is very sorrowful and alone at this pub, like I was mentioning before, it's a tripod. Man, this is a film that just totally sucked me in and engaged me, man. And on a second viewing, I was able to grow a stronger appreciation for it, and just seeing the direction of Matthew Amalric, whose directorial work I hadn't been previously familiar with. It looks like he did a film in, I think, 2017 called Barbara, I think it was called, if I'm going to get that correct here. I don't like IMDb's new layout, man. You click on one thing, and yeah, Barbara from 2017. So he's also done some other work like Tournée from 2010. So He's solid, man. Actually, speaking of, I just rewatched Diving Bell and the Butterfly, and his performance in that film is great as well. It's just, yeah, that's a whole other story. Great film, highly recommended. But man, big fan of this film. This kind of went, I feel like, under the radar. But if you have Mubi, it's now streaming on there as well. This did get a Blu-ray in the States as well. So either way, there's options of seeing it. But don't sleep on this one, man. Really terrific stuff. That's Matthew Amalric's Hold Me Tight at number 5. All right, man. Number 4 from a filmmaker who did a film that I watched for 2018 that I liked quite a lot. This is David Lowery's The Green Knight.
Why is it green, do you think?
The night.
Yes. Was he born that way?
Perhaps it is the color of his blood when he blushes.
But why green? Why not blue? Or red?
Because he's not of this earth.
But green is the color of earth, of living things, of life.
And of rot.
Yes. Yes. We deck our halls with it and dye our linens. But should it come creeping up the cobbles, we scrub it out fast as we can. When it blooms beneath our skin, we bleed it out, and when we, together all, find that our reach has exceeded our grasp, we cut it down. We stamp it out, we spread ourselves atop it and smother it beneath our bellies, but it comes back.
I believe this is my fourth time watching this film, man. Yeah, as you can tell, I really like this film. And it's a film that the more that I've watched it, the more that I've gotten out of it. And I gotta say up front, man, I really don't know a whole lot about the original story or anything like that. I don't know anything about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I mean, we learned about it in school a little bit. We kind of briefly touched on it. But the actual specifics of the story, I couldn't tell you. So, first time I'm watching this film, man, I'm watching it theatrically. And you know, I'm taking in the visuals. I'm taking in these great moments, and I'm like, man, what a gorgeous film, you know. But let me try to get underneath the surface. Let me actually see what's going on in this film, man. These moments, and when I get out of the film, man, I go, what a fantastic film that was. You know, I loved it, and so I watch it again, and I still love it more. So this time I'm watching it. And I'm like, I want to actually look up a little bit more about the actual story, about what certain moments in the film mean. Because what's interesting about the film is that it's an adventure film. You know, we have this character, Sir Gawain, played by Dave Patel, and on I forgot if it was on Christmas Eve or it was on Christmas Day, the Green Knight comes. He says, well, one of you guys, you know, you strike a blow to me and I'm going to strike a blow right back to you. So his cockiness Gawain's cockiness gets in the way of him, cuts his head off, and Green Knight grows it right back and says, in a year, I'm going to cut your head off, man. So cut to a year. Gawain, he's got to go on his journey, man, across the land to prove that he, you know, for his own, to prove that he is a knight, a true knight, and to prove to everybody in his village, man, to prove to the people around him that he is a man. Now, David Lowery is an interesting filmmaker because I didn't see his Pete's Dragon film he did for Disney, but I remember seeing his film A Ghost Story a couple years ago, and I remember liking it, but it not totally resonating with me. I said there are moments in the film that are really exceptional, but from beginning to end, something didn't totally grab me. So when I watched this film, man, and like I said before, he did The Old Man and the Gun, which I watched from 2018. Really like that film, man. I mean, any film where they go to see Two-Lane Blacktop's good in my book, man. So I'm watching this film. It's a slow-paced film, long passages of time without dialogue. I mean, heavily visual, of course. That's a very surface-level kind of critique to say in the film. It's a beautiful-looking film, man. You have these harsh screens. There's a great sequence when Gawain is underwater, and you have these really dark reds mixed with blacks. It's beautiful, man. And in the third act of the film, we have this kind of I don't even know what to call it, man. This like pathway covered in bushes. I mean, you can watch the trailer and see a lot of these kind of beautiful shots, and I recommend if you do watch this film. I mean, the 4K on this looks unbelievable, man. I watched this on my 4K, and my gosh, man, this is a beautiful looking film. And I remember when it came out, man, I think I heard that A24 were trying to make this their big theatrical film. They sunk a lot of money into it. And it's interesting they would choose this one because, well, it does, I don't know what the exact budget is, but it's not a cheap looking film. The set design, the costumes, it's all top notch, It's fantastic. The visual effects look great for the most part. There's a couple, times where it looks a little iffy, but that's not, I'm just saying. So I say that where you have this big budgeted film. And it's interesting they would try to get this into a wide theatrical distribution. Now, a lot of the films go to wide theatrical distribution, but this is one that, from what I heard, they're really trying to push, be like their big, one of their big films. And this is a slow-moving, very methodical film, man. It's much more concerned with the character of Gawain than it is about a narrative, man. It's becoming the trend on this episode, man. Less about the narrative, more about the characters and the experience. There's just these fantastic sequences that on initial viewing I thought were great, but I'm watching it and I don't exactly know what, I'm watching it just as a surface level. So doing a little bit of research into what certain things mean in the film and certain events mean, while that doesn't necessarily, that's not required to make a film good, my reasoning is that if I can enjoy a film on a surface level, even if I don't fully understand it, then it's a good film. If I gotta watch a film and somebody says, well, you'll like, and I say I didn't like it, and they say, oh, you gotta watch this video, and I'm like, man, you already failed as a filmmaker, man. If I don't like it on the initial, if I don't like it on the shallow surface level viewing, then you failed, man. And I love this film, but going back, for example, there's a sequence early on where there's a beggar played by Barry Keoghan, again, one of my favorite actors working right now, and he asks Gawain for some change, and Gawain says no, and he asks him again, and then Gawain's like, all right, I'll give you some coins, and it's one of these moments where I didn't even register it. It's such a brief moment, but that is one important point in the story where his initial distrust and his initial resentment of giving this beggar any kind of money shows his character, man. And that's what the film is about. It's about kind of the inner journey as well. And when you get to the third act, it's when it really shines for me, man. I'd say the third act is just unbelievable, man. There's probably my favorite sequence in the film is a long, not even long. It's like a 10-minute sequence. There's no dialogue. It's this montage sequence at the end of the film, kind of about what's gonna happen and the downfall of this character, man, and what could happen. And it's beautiful, man. And I also got to mention with you the score. The score in this film, the violins, the I don't even know what you call it, the opera, I guess. It's not, I don't know, musical terms here like that. It's all haunting, man. You watch this with, I don't know what the 4K audio was. It was 5.1 or Atmos. I really have no idea. But watch this film loud, man. This is a film that needs to be watched big and loud on the largest and loudest screen you can find, man. Going back before, when it came to looking up some aspects of the film that ended up improving my viewing of it, when it came to the ending of the film, man, I was reading a point with David Lowery where he talks about the ending and his what he thinks it is, because it left a little ambiguous. And I've watched this film a couple times and I kept getting this one thing. I'm like, okay, that's got to be the ending. And then I watched it this time, and because I read that, man, I now have a completely different idea of the final 10 seconds of this film. It's a way that a line is delivered, and there's an action where I go, you know what? I'm confident that has to mean that, man. And because of that, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Now I'm seeing the whole film in a different light in just that last 10 seconds, man, in just a little moment, like that. And because of that, on multiple viewings, the quality just improves and improves, man. This is an absolutely just beautiful film. On the surface level, yes. I mean, I'm not gonna act like I understand everything, man, because some things I just straight up don't understand. But I can still take in the visual of it all, the great sequence with the giants, man. It's beautiful. The whole sequence when he has to go find the lady's head under the water, which I looked up what that meant after, and that's great, man. It's a film that it's a little over 2 hours, and you're either going to be with it, and it's going to fly right by for you, or if it's not going to be your kind of film, you're going to feel like, man, I don't even know what's going on here, man. It's a slow film. It's equally a quiet film as it is bombastic. It's a beautiful film, man, and it's made me want to go back and actually like I said, and go back and watch a Ghost Story as well to see if I have a different opinion on it. The whole film has a very dreamlike, surreal quality. It feels like it exists in a plane of its own reality, you know? Much in the same way I was talking about with the tragedy of Macbeth, this isn't quite, the dialogue is less more decipherable than that, you know, but you get what I mean, man. Or hopefully you get what I mean. You get a real sense of time in this, man. The way the passing of time. I mean, the whole right from the start, man. It cuts to a year like that. The pacing, right after it happens, man. You're in it like that, and you get a real sense, like I was talking about before, in the third act, going with time. And I want to wrap this up actually because I gotta get to the next couple films. But a couple performances I want to mention really quick. Alicia Vikander plays a couple roles. She's great in the film. Understated performance. There's another actor who I don't even know if it's the spoiler or not, but like, it's more a review. Anyway, a great actor who's been in a lot of stuff now. He comes in the film in the third act, and yeah, he's very good. Sean Harris has a small part in the film. He's the king. He is Gawain's father, I think it was. He's solid as well. I was like, man, who the hell is that guy? He reminded me of Daniel Bruhl, but he was actually in the last couple Mission Impossible films. I remember watching those. Like, is that Daniel Bruhl? No, it looks just like him, man. As well as Kate Dickey's very good as well. You know, this past viewing, man, just every time I watch this, I just get more and more out of it. And I'm sure somebody who's more knowledgeable with the story, with this legend, will probably get something different out of it, or probably get something more beneficial out of it, I would assume. But just watching this film, man, I mean, this is one of these films. There's just multiple sequences, just makes the hairs on my arm stand. It's just an absolutely beautiful film, man. And gosh, man, I just cannot say how much I love this film enough, man. Beautiful, incredible film. That's The Green Knight at number 4. At number 3 is the feature film debut of Mr. Michael Sarnowski, starring Nicolas Cage. This is Pig.
They're not real. You get that, right? None of it is real. The critics aren't real. The customers aren't real. Because this isn't real. You aren't real.
Okay.
Derek, why do you care about these people? They don't care about you. None of them. They don't even know you. Because you haven't shown them. Every day you'll wake up and there'll be less of you. You live your life for them and they don't even see you. You don't even see yourself. We don't get a lot of things to really care about.
You know, in a sea of films that are 2 hours, 2.5 hours, it's nice to get a film that's a solid, crisp 90 minutes, man. What is this, an hour 32? Jeez Louise, man, it's hard to find these days. You kidding me? My gosh, man. The film flies by. We have Pig starring Nicolas Cage and Alex Wolff, a beautiful, haunting film. You have Nicolas Cage plays his character Rob, who lives by himself in the woods with his pig. Man, they go and they hunt. They're truffle hunters. They can find these great truffles, sell them to this guy Alex Wolff, plays his character Mir, who acts like he's a hot shot, drives a nice car. He makes good money with Rob and his pig. So one night, Rob is woken up and his house is invaded, man, his little cabin. His pig is stolen, and with the help of Amir, he's got to find his pig, man. And you hear a plot like that. I mean, I remember when this came out, and, you know, Nick Cage is one of the great actors of our times, but anyone will tell you he was doing a lot of straight-to-video stuff, which they make a funny joke about in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. You know, he talks about, any other job, you do a lot, they say good job, but here, so you hear a plot like that, so you get his pig back, and you're going, all right, what can this possibly be? It's the way that Michael Sarnowski writes and directs. It is also written with Vanessa Block that really puts this film up above what would be something of a tepid melodrama or just something that wouldn't be taken as seriously. In massive part, to the performers in this film and the character writing. I mean, it goes without saying, like I said before, Nicolas Cage is one of the best actors of our time. You know, I confidently stand behind that. I always have. And his performance here is subtle and nuanced without being... what's the word I'm looking for? Without feeling lazy, you know, see a lot of times if a character, like say, is mute or they don't say a lot of dialogue and they're primarily through body language, you go, oh man, you know, They were so great, they were so stoic, but a lot of times it's just like, well, they were just silent, man. But it's the way that Cage does it here, where in the first part of this film, where he's just living out in these woods, man, he's very to himself. He doesn't have any dialogue. He's just kind of happy doing his own thing with this pig, man. It's the only thing in this world that he really even cares about. And then in the second, when the big, thing happens and he has to actually go, we see that character opening up more. We see the way that he delivers the dialogue. He doesn't even fully go big, except for like one part in the film. It could have been very easy for an actor like that to do, or for a lesser filmmaker to do, where the big dramatic moment is him having to go big. I mean, my favorite sequence in the whole film is a part where Nick Cage, he goes back to his old house and he has this dialogue back and forth between this young kid, and it just, man, that scene, the way the dialogue is put back and forth, it's so emotional, man. I mean, first time I saw this film, I was a wreck after watching it, because it's a film about a lot of different things, man. It's about finding who you really are. We have Nick Cage's character. I should probably actually start referring to them as the actual characters and not the actors. So you have Rob, who is dealing with this loss, man. He feels like there's nothing left for him in this world, but he knows what kind of person he is and who he was. And meanwhile, you have Amir, who wants to be somebody who he's not. He drives around in this nice car. He listens to opera, but not even that. He listens to a tape or whatever of a guy explaining why opera is the most sophisticated, why it's the best. We see the cracks in Amir's character where he has this sort of ego and narcissism that is slowly broken down throughout the film, because even there's a point where Rob is saying, I gotta go to the city, and Amir is initially hesitant. He's like, I'm not taking to the city, man. That's my place, that's my people. And then when we actually get there, we see that maybe he's not totally telling the truth, man. And we learn more about that character, man. This is a film where there's really no antagonists in it. All of the characters who are close to being an antagonist are really broken down into something more human, which I think is a big part of why the script is so strong in this film. In the third act, we get Adam Arkin, who plays a part in the film, and our initial interaction with him is one idea, but the way that Rob is able to communicate through him and through a mutual, something mutual they have in common, it goes beyond just being, I mean, I've heard people talk about this being a quote-unquote revenge film, and I don't think that's the right term to use, man, because it's not revenge in the sense that he's getting back to them. It's more kind of breaking through to them. One of the sequences in the film is when he's talking to somebody he used to know who was part of this restaurant. He's lining out, man. He's like, what are you doing with your life, man? This is not what you want to do. There's not a lot in this life we really get to care for, so what are you doing, man? And it's great, man. I guess you could call it revenge through empathy, but it's more just the empathy of it all. It's nobody getting revenge on anybody else. It's just these people who have these things they love or loved, and they just want it back to them. When we get to sequences with Amir, there's one great moment in the film where he's talking through a door to someone, and it's just great. It says more about that character than any other dialogue scene that you would need. As well as at the end of the film, man, there's a part where after all is said and done, we just see him, and after all, he's by himself, and he's just laying in this nice car, silent, man, just kind of like trying to figure out who he really is as a person after everything, man, everything put into perspective, and that's what's great about the contrasting performances between Nick Cage and Alex Wolff. They're both coming at this from different places, but ultimately still reach kind of the same middle area, which is great. I should also mention Adam Arkin as well, who, like I said, comes into the third act of the film, but his performance right there is memorable in its own right. You have these different themes of grief, of loss, of finding your place in this world, man, with the brief time that we have. Another great sequence in the film is Rob giving this whole speech about in Amir's apartment, talking about the tsunami, man, and how the brief time we have on this earth, man, you gotta find something to care for, man, that you really care about. And it's touching as hell, man. The ending of the film as well, the last minute or 2 minutes, man, it's just something else entirely, man. The final shot of this film is unforgettable. It's beautiful, man. I mean, what a hell of a debut with Michael Sarnowski, who's going to direct the next Quiet Place film. And I read that Nick Cage took a pay cut on this this is a very low budgeted film, so the fact that it actually got made at all is crazy, man. But no, man, this one got a lot of attention in terms of the whole kind of Cage renaissance that has been going on, which I think it's all. I mean, to me, it never really ended, man. It's one of these things where he was always doing these good roles. Just the films themselves weren't very good, you know. But with that said, I mean, the film itself, it's dramatic without being melodramatic. It is emotional without being comical. It's just fantastic, man. It's a hell of a debut. Writer, director, and also writer as well. Vanessa Block. Just one of the best dramas of recent memory, man. Love this film. That is Pig at number 3. Well, just talked about a film that was a little over 90 minutes, and this film is a little short of 2.5 hours, but my gosh, man, it flies by. Sean Baker's Red Rocket.
I don't want to be here, all right? This is embarrassing.
Well, I don't want you
think
here
I want to show up
either.
like this? I got my ass fucking kicked. I just need a place to crash. Why can't you be
You're not What does it look like, a hotel?
Really? It's like that?
Can you get off the property, please?
Why? What are you gonna fucking do? Really?
What,
You're
you
not
want,
gonna let,
oh, you
really,
want me to
you're
call
gonna
the
act...
cops? I'll call the cops.
Don't
No, I'm calling the cops. 10, 9, 8, 7, faster.
I'm technically off the property, so you can't call the cops because I'm on public land, respecting your boundaries.
Can you keep it down?
Can you come over here so I don't have to project my voice, please? Fuck. Seriously, I just need a place to crash for a couple of days. What's the big deal?
Mikey, go fuck yourself.
Oh, you don't even know what I've been through.
Oh,
look at my fucking face. I just was on a bus for 2 days. I had to walk here from the bus station.
Why don't you stay with your mama?
My mom's in a nursing home in Labarque, a care home. I can't sleep there.
Man, I tell you, Sean Baker has really proven himself to be one of the best filmmakers of this generation, man. I haven't seen all of his films, but my God, what I've seen has been fantastic, man. And Red Rocket might be my favorite of his work so far. Simon Rex plays this guy, Mikey, who we just, right from the start, we know that this guy is in trouble, man. He's going back to his former home in Texas, man, with his, wife. Well, we thought ex-wife or anything like that. And we already know, man, he's been in some trouble. He's coming back to his hometown. He's trying to do right, but my gosh, man, he just cannot get with it. So he goes from one situation to another, starting to sell drugs, starting to sell weed, tries to get involved with this teenage girl, Strawberry, played by Susanna Sun, and hijinks ensue from there. One of the funniest films of the year for sure, man, and a big part of that is not only from Sean Baker's strong directing and writing, as he always does, also written by Chris Burkow, I believe is how you say his name, but what Sean Baker does so well with all of his films is that he can take professional actors and first-time actors and have it blend so well, man. Simon Rex in this film is just one of the best performances of his career. I think, like many people, I've been familiar with him through the more comedic kind of the scary movie kind of films, and he's an actor who I just never thought, I don't want to say I never thought could pull a performance like this, but it's in a way where I imagine that Sean Baker has seen him previously before, and I can't imagine that when he was writing the script for this, man, when he and the name here, Chris Burkow, how do I say? I don't know how to say his name. I'm terrible with all names. The fact I get Simon Rex right is crazy. But I can't imagine that when he was writing this film, he didn't at least partially have him in mind, because Simon Rex plays his performance to a T, man. He has this charismatic narcissism. You cannot take your eyes off the screen whenever he's on, man, because even when we see him get into increasingly bad situations, almost out of his way to get into bad situations, he is so captivating as a screen presence, man. His interactions with other characters, the next door neighbor, what the hell is his name? I want to make sure I get his name right. Lonnie, played by Ethan Darbone, who I believe is a first-time actor as well, who's great in the film. Though, like, their interactions are great when they're just in the car and Mikey's talking about, I just mentioned that Mike is a former adult film actor, so he's in the car just totally like, yeah, you know, I did this chick and, you know, I was about to make the scene and this and that. It's just so fantastic, man. We see him get involved with this girl, Strawberry, who is this wide-eyed but kind of good-hearted but ultimately dim-witted teenage girl, and man, I tell you, their back and forth was great as well, because early on, I'm watching the film, man, and I had seen the trailer previously, and I forgot what happened in the trailer, man. So I'm watching the film, and that first scene when he sees her at this donut shop, and he goes back, I'm watching it, man, like, I don't know how this is going to play out, man. There's no way this could play out great, and just what happens from there is great, man. What I was saying before with Sean Baker is that when you have a lot of the first-time actors in this, I mean, they all, I'm not going to say they're all great, but they all have this natural kind of charisma that you can't take your eyes off the screen, man. You have a character like June, played by Brittany Rodriguez, who I think I read that Sean Baker cast her because he found her like walking her dog, man, or something. But she's solid in the film, man. She has a small part. She's annoyed with Mikey the whole time. Her brothers in the film, I can't remember their names. I apologize. Some of these actors don't have IMDb photos, so I don't want to make guesses. But they're all great. They're all like annoyed with him, man. They really don't like him. There's just moments early on that are great when he's trying to find a job, and it feels very real, but feels very funny as well. You look at the way that Sean Baker does this kind of realism, where it feels scripted, but I don't even want to say improvised to an extent, because sometimes I feel some films I watch that have these improvised sequences of the characters, just overlapping dialogue. Sometimes it can work and sometimes it can't. Sometimes it just really drives me crazy, where I'm like, man, this doesn't even feel like there's an outline for the script. And other times, like in a Sean Baker film, it just all flows together so naturally, man. I should also say the way the film is shot is great. There's just these great open shots, man. You have like this at night, the factory, and the steam going up into the sky. You have this donut place with the lights on it. It's fantastic, man. A lot of the colors in this film look great, because like early, no, I shouldn't say early, but when he's in the donut shop, I noticed like little things like the wallpaper, like the yellow is sticking out, and like some of Strawberry's like clothes are sticking out, man. It's great. I should also mention as well, Brie Elred, who plays Lexi in the film. Her and her mother, man. Her mother, played by Brenda Deese, who just passed away, actually, R.I.P. They're both really solid together. That first scene when he comes to their house, and they're both just immediately annoyed, like, what are you doing here, man? It's just, man, I found myself cracking up hard in this film. I remember I saw this film theatrically. There was one other guy in the theater, and I'm in the theater, man. I'm laughing at the jokes, I'm just having a good time. And this guy was as silent as a mouse, man. I don't know if he wasn't a fan of the film or what, but he was not having it. The tonal shifts in the film as well. It never got as dark as I imagined it would with some of Sean Baker's other work. When I say dark, I don't mean grim, but more so is that he's great at creating this uncomfortable kind of tension. So even in moments of the film, like there's a whole subplot in really the beginning of the third act where you're like, what is going on in this film, man? The way that's all handled and plays out is had me on the edge of my seat, man, and the way that concludes was great. It was cracking me up. I should also say the soundtrack as well. Primarily, this is one of these films that it's gonna be hard to listen to Bye 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 by NSYNC without thinking of this film, because the way they play it is great, and the way that a character mentions it in the film is great as well. And there's even a point where they have a character sing the song, and it fits into the whole theme of the film, man. It's a film that you're watching and you're going, there's no way that this can end well, because Mikey is going out of his way to create these problems unbeknownst to him. There's a point in the film where things are going well, things are looking up, he's making money, him and his wife are getting along, the mother likes him, and you realize, man, I'm only halfway through this film, there ain't no way this can be this. And the increasingly poor decisions that he makes. I mean, there's a whole subplot where he's going after this teenage kid that was cracking me up, man, and the parents come into it. I mean, this is some of the hardest I've laughed in a cinema in a good amount of time, man. Especially the ending of the film I want to mention. The ending of the film had me cracking up, because I'm watching this film, and when it cuts to the credits, in the last minute of the film or so, I'm thinking of the implications after the fact of what's going to happen next in the story. And I'm thinking that just fits in with the whole tone of the rest of the film, man. It's got this dark kind of comedic flair to it. And not a whole lot is resolved. Characters don't learn anything, but man, it's satisfying as hell, man. It was cracking me up. Man, Sean Baker really is just, if I think of just some of the most talented filmmakers who are putting out these films on a wide theatrical level, of this era, he's done a bunch of stuff beforehand, I should say. I just look at a film like this and just seeing him grow as a filmmaker and his writing, man, he's just getting stronger and stronger. And this is my favorite work that he's done. And he's one of these guys. He's one of these guys like S. Craig Zahler, or I want to make sure I get the name right. Is it Gareth Evans or Gareth Edwards who did The Raid? I get those two mixed up. One of them did Godzilla. The other is Gareth Evans, X-Ray. It's like one of these guys, like Sean Baker, S. Craig Zalek, Gareth Evans. No matter what they do, they got a new film out, I'm there opening night, man. I don't even care. It could be a documentary about how fun it is to grow grass. I'll be like, well, the way they directed it is probably fantastic. Man, this is probably the funniest film I had seen this year. Endlessly entertaining. I had, on a reviewing, man, I had such a blast with this. Just, I watched this film and I'm like, gosh, man, this is totally my kind of film, man. My kind of dark comedy. Love this film, man. That's Sean Baker's Red Rocket at number 2. So for most of 2021, man, Red Rocket was my favorite film that year, and this film I thought was great as well. But I didn't think I liked it quite as much as I thought I would. You're trying to have expectations when you watch a film. You try to watch a film with an open mind. But when I walked out of this film the first time I saw it, I thought that was really good, man. Just short of being great, I think. And then rewatching it this time, like some of his other films, that second viewing, man, is when it really hit me like a ton of bricks, man. From one of the best filmmakers of all time, one of his best films, at number 1 is Licorice Pizza.
How do you like working at Tiny Toes?
I hate working at Tiny Toes.
You should start your own business.
What business should I be in?
I don't know. What do you like?
I don't know.
You're an actress. You should be an actress.
So how'd you become such a hotshot actor?
I'm a showman. It's my calling. I don't know how to do anything else. It's what I'm meant to do. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I've been a song and dance man.
Come on. Ever since you were a kid. Song and dance man. Where are your parents?
My mom works for me.
Oh, of course she does.
Yes, she does,
That
in my
makes
public
sense.
relations company.
In your public relations company? Because you have that.
Yes.
And you're an actor.
Yes.
And you're a secret agent, too.
Well, no, I'm not a secret agent. That's funny.
Man, I tell ya, this film completely won me over on the second time I watched this, man. When I watched The Master for the first time, when I watched Phantom Thread for the first time, I kind of had, and when I watched this for the first time, I had the same reaction really to all three. I'm like, that was really good, but, there's something missing for me. I can't explain it. I go back and I watch all three of them. The Master, I think it's a 10 out of 10. Phantom Thread, I think it's one of my favorite films, period. Actually, Master probably is as well, also 10 out of 10. And Licorice Pizza, man, is a 10 out of 10. I love this film, man. Paul Thomas Anderson has just not lost it at all, man. I do need to rewatch Inherent Vice. I've only ever seen that once, and we'll need to get a second opinion on it. This stars Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman. Cooper Hoffman's son, Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's this kid Gary. He's a kid who he's a get-goer, Kickstarter kind of guy, man. He's always trying to make a buck. He's always trying to do something, man. The next big thing, whether it's acting, whether it's starting up a business, whether it's his own agency. He's always trying to get on the next big thing. And he's really headstrong. That's what I'm looking for. I want to say get-goer. That's not the thing. Alana Haim is working as this kid's photographer, or like a school photographer. They have like picture day and all that. And I mean, she is older than him. Like, she's just at it. She's just like, he immediately, he's like, I'm going to marry that girl. She's like, yeah, whatever, weirdo, And it's their adventures together where he takes her out on what he perceives as a date, and he's really into her, and she's like, Gary, man, you're too young for me, man. I'm too old for you. This is never going to work. And ultimately in the film, you have this great friendship between these two characters of two people who knowingly can never be together because of the age difference, but realize they can't be without each other in a way that's more romantic than a traditional love story, in the same way that Phantom Thread is incredibly romantic by doing the opposite of that, by having a character's disdain for another character reverse itself into this ultimate romance of going, I am the only one for you, man. Much in the same way that Alana and Gary, man, I remember when this came out, and there was a lot of people saying, like, these two, like, this is creepy, this is weird, these two characters, and I think people are missing the point with this film, man. It's these two characters who can't live without each other. throughout the film, we see sequences of Gary acting like he can get any girl he wants, and he probably could. His ma works for him. He's an actor. He's getting in this waterbed business. Everything's going well for him, and he's like, look at how successful I am. Meanwhile, you got Alana Haim's character who is like, I'm older than you. I know, more mature guys near you, and your friends are dorks and all that, and you're all losers. But we'll still hang out. I'll still help you out. So there's moments in the film, long stretches where they'll go without each other, basically trying to show each other off, or show themselves off to each other, like, look how better off I am without you. But ultimately, again and again, they realize that it can't work. They're gonna probably find other, romantic lovers in their life, but ultimately, they will always be connected with each other. Which is what I'm saying does a greater job at the romance than just a traditional love story. Even the ending of the film, man, there's a moment where there's an action that happens, and then immediately Alana says something after the fact, as Paul Thomas Anderson, fully aware that, yeah, this can never be a relationship because of these two. And I think that's taken too literally with some of the dialogue at the end of this film, because it's these moments throughout, man, of just this teenage maturity but still love for each other. There's a great moment in the film where Gary, where they both fall asleep on this water mattress, and Gary contemplates touching her breast when she's asleep, but ultimately he backs away because he just realizes that he asked us earlier to see her breasts. But it's just that fact that he just cares and respects her too much, man. There's a great sequence, a great part with Sean Penn and Tom Waits, man. They're riding a motorcycle, and Alana falls off the motorcycle, and Gary doesn't even hesitate. Throughout that whole night, he's been trying to show off, like, look how awesome I am. But the second she's in danger, man, he's just totally gung-ho after her, man. This is a period piece as well, and I think that Paul Thomas Anderson and Quentin Tarantino, what they do so well together when it comes to period pieces is, one, not playing it up for the fact of it being a period piece, and two, the needle drops they use in the film. And what I said originally when it comes to them not overdoing the period piece is that you watch a film that tries to be from the 1960s, and you have all these cars that are from the year 1960 or 1959. It's like, man, they're probably driving cars from the 40s and 30s, man. What are you talking about? You don't drive out on the street now and everyone's got a Tesla or something, man. There's cars from the 90s, 2000s, man. And that's what they do so well here. A lot of the fashions, a lot of the cars, a lot of the backgrounds. It's not like, they're not talking about they're not having these big moments to remind you of the era it's in. It's the way the film is shot. It's the way that it looks, man. It all naturally comes together. Bradley Cooper in the film, who comes into the film in the third act, you can watch it and go like, man, what is he doing in the film? But when you're watching it, you realize you're just getting glimpses into these characters' lives, man. So you have moments with him. I bring him up because I remember his fashion, this great white suit that he has, and this great big beard. You watch these moments in time. I should go back before, so I'm rambling off now. Going with the needle drops as well. It's not the big hits of that time. It's just what was probably on the radio or what was probably just happened to be around at that time. Much in the same way you have like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I mean, Tarantino's playing these 60s songs, but it's not all the big hits and all that. But what I'm saying before is that when it comes to the narrative of the film, is that we're getting these moments with these characters' lives. So when you have this long sequence with Bradley Cooper, who is this unhinged character, who just steals the scene, man, he's fantastic. He's menacing, but he's also hilarious. You can watch the film and go, man, what did that have to do with anything? He's just there, and that doesn't ultimately pay off for the plot. But it does, man, because it adds to these characters. It's these characters who are in the situation, and we see like a moment during that when Gary, for the first time in the film, really, well, I should say one of the first, really see kind of him being broken through, him being scared of something that Bradley Cooper says, and Alana not having to comfort him, but her being there with him for that situation. Like earlier in the film when he gets in trouble and Alana's the only one who's there for him, man. It's incredibly touching, and on a second viewing, it flies by, man. I mean, it's a total hangout film, man. Like, like I said before, I compare it to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in a way that, I mean, this could be a successor to that, where you just have these moments in these characters' lives. I mean, this is over a longer period of time than that. That's more of just a couple days and then it jumps in time. But it's just these moments, these characters' lives, ultimately realizing, much in the same way of Cliff and Rick in that film, when you get to the end of that film, there's just that brief exchange between those two, and you realize that that relationship, that friendship is so masterfully crafted, and it's so well done that you really feel the impact of those two relationships. Much in the same way at the end of this film, man, these two characters who rely on each other, who will always need each other, realizing they can't be romantically involved, but will always love each other. And that, to me, is more romantic than a romance film. This is, I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson, man, time and time again, has proven himself to be one of the greatest filmmakers, period, man. He's up there for me with the Scorseses, with the Kubricks. I mean, he is just a genius. This film is just more proof of that. And he's working on his new film this year, and I'll be there opening night. Love this film, and I'm sure I'm going to love it even more on repeated viewing. So my number one favorite film of 2021, man, is Licorice Pizza. So that was my top 10 favorite films of 2021. I watched 84 films from this year, so now's the time where I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to my favorite. So, starting at the bottom from number 84, we have Knocking. Number 83, Freeland. 82, Passing. 81, Coda. 80, Ahead's Knee. 79, France. 78, The Pink Cloud. 77, Azor. 76, I Care a Lot. 75, Paper Spiders. 74, Akila's Escape. 73, The Electrical Life of Louis Wayne. 72, Limbo. 71, A Cop Movie. 70, House of Gucci. 69, Upcoming Summer. 68, Slalom. 67, The Night House. 66, Test Pattern. 65, Judas and the Black Messiah. 64, Belfast. 63, In Between Dying. 62, Wild Indian. 61, Being the Ricardos. 60, Concrete Cowboy. 59, Luz, or Luz. 58, This Is Not a Burial, It's a Resurrection. 57, El Planeta. 56, The Harder They Fall. 55, Help. 54, The Power of the Dog. 53, The Hand of God. 52, The Dig. 51, Cop Shop. 50, No Sudden Move. 49, The Summit of the Gods. 48, Zola. 47, Mass. 46, Sardar Udam. 45, The Last Duel. 44, Days. 43, Faya Dai. 42, King Richard. 41, The Worst Person in the World. 40, Come On, Come On. 39, The Beta Test. 38, The Lost Daughter. 37, The Man with Answers. 36, Firebird. 35, Seven Prisoners. 34, A Hero. 33, Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy. 32, Dinner in America. 31, Hive. 30, Petite Maman. 29, Apples. 28, The Velvet Queen. 27, Boiling Point. 26, Flea. 25, Playground. 24, Together Together. 23, Knitram. 22, Old Henry. 21, Lamb. And 20, The Little Things. 19, Happening. 18, West Side Story. 17, The Map of Tiny Perfect Things. 16, Titan. 15, Compartment Number 6. 14, Our Friend. 13, Drive My Car. 12, Spencer. 11, Nobody, and for the top 10, once again, number 10, The Tragedy of Macbeth, number 9, After Yang, number 8, Nowhere Special, number 7, Memoria, number 6, I'm Your Man, number 5, Hold Me Tight, number 4, The Green Knight, number 3, Pig, number 2, Red Rocket, and number 1, Licorice Pizza. Alright, so now is the time to randomize the years 1930 to 2017. The previous years that have been done are 1998, 1958, 1956, 2018, and now 2021. So, the next top 10 year list will be, drumroll please, 1934. Alright, man. So come back in July. We're going to do my top 10 favorite films of 1934. Thanks, guys, for watching and listening, and all the best.
And cut. Perfect. Print it. Let's move on.